welcome to another Bruce Starr Show, another behind the comedy screen scene, the comedy circuit scene. I have such a great time doing this show. You know, I never really explained myself in other shows. In 1981, I went down to, I left Boston and drove across country to Los Angeles. And my friend, Mitch Ween, picked me up at my sister's place and dropped me off at this place called the Improv. And he pushed me out the door and he said, go in there and ask for this guy and that guy, Bruce Smirnoff and Mark Goldstein and Kevin Nealon. And that's where you're going to live. And that's what I did. It was an incredible experience being at the very beginning of what any comedian would say was the golden age of comedy. And it all, at the time, centered around the Improv, because Evening at the Improv was in production and the shows were airing everywhere in United States and in Canada and maybe elsewhere in the world. And what did that mean for us? When people saw Evening at the Improv on TV, they thought to themselves, why can't we open up a comedy store, a comedy club in Seattle, in St. Louis, in Detroit, in San Antonio, in Dallas, in Houston, in Miami, in Orlando? And they did. And I had the incredible luck to know many of the comedians that were on Evening at the Improv because we hung out together literally every night. It was great. Barry Martyr, I've mentioned him before. He was my roommate. And Barry wrote for all the comedians. Letterman, I mean, I could just go on and on. I remember some of the comedians would be sleeping on my couch because they had a fight with their girlfriend and couldn't go home. That's how much that it was an interesting part of my indoctrination into the business. And once I saw a trend here that there were comedy clubs opening up in the United States, Barry said to me, why don't you book the comedians? Because the big agencies don't want to book them. They only want to book them in movies or in their sitcoms. They don't want to book them for a few $1,000s for a weekend, but you could do it. Their agents won't do it, but you could do it. And after a lot of pushing and a lot of working on me to do that, I finally said, you know what, it's a great opportunity. I ended up working with 35 stand-up comedians. Some of the big names were Howie Mandel, the unknown comic, Paul Reiser, Bobby Slayton, a lot of great, talented comedians. Many of you know Larry Miller. The list goes on. And it was an incredible time in my life. I loved it. And it allowed me to meet and get to know all the comedy people, from agents to managers to producers to casting directors to the performers. It was incredible to watch people like Jim Carrey before anybody knew he was, and to be able to say, he's going to be a big star. And I predicted the same thing for several others, and they really went a long way. So it was a great time in my life. And now I'm getting a chance to reacquaint myself with many of those incredible talents. And one of the great talents, perhaps an unsung hero, not one of the most famous guys that there is in show business, but one of the most accomplished, is my guest today, Bob Perlow. Now, Bob, if you've ever been to not Evening at the Improv, but if you've ever been to The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, you know exactly who Bob Perlow is, because he was the warm-up guy for the Jay Leno show. He's got some great stories to tell about that, but not only the warm-up guy for the Tonight Show. But Bob, help me out here. You were the original warm-up guy for so many of the great comedies that we all know so much today. Welcome to the show, Bob. I really appreciate you taking time to be with us here today.
So you can see me now?
I can see you perfectly.
I'm on the noon. What do they call this? Honey, I'm on the moon. Boom. What is this?
You're close. It's Zoom, Bob.
Zoom in.
Zoom.
I'm zooming. So he can see me. I can see. Look at Bruce. Everybody.
If you only had a wife there, this would be great.
Yelling. I'm alone. Jesus. If you were here, you'd see Bruce. You don't know him. It's from the 80s. Yeah, he looks all right. Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to talk to him for a while. Love you. No, love you. Hey, Bruce. What?
Oh, Bob, you cracked me up from the first moments I saw you and met you. You have such an incredible story. Would you tell it from way back? Because it really is one of the most unique situations, really, in show business for the last 50 years. And you've done so much that people in the world would not even know about or hear about. So tell us your story, your show business story right from the beginning.
Well, I didn't go out to California to be in show business. I went out to be a tour guide. Now, going back, well, before that, in the mid-'70s, Jay Leno, me, and 3 other people were in an improv group together in Boston. And then we broke up, as most improv groups do. Jay went out to LA. I stayed in Boston. Then I got on cruise ships. I was a cruise director. Long story short, moved out to LA to continue being a tour guide, roomed with Jay. We got a house in LA. And then little by little, for some reason, I was playing paddle tennis in Venice. And the guy on the other side of the net said, "You're funny." I go, "Oh, thanks." "You want to be in show business?" That's literally how it happened. I go, "Sure." He was the producer of Laverne and Shirley.
Oh.
And he said, "You want to be a writer?" I go, "I guess so. I've never written anything." He goes, "You'll be fine." That was on a Wednesday. Friday, I was on Laverne and Shirley, the number one show on TV at the time. Drive up to the gate. In my mind, I'm going, I used to see movies where people drove up to the gate at Paramount. And for some reason, they'd see the gate, the guard gate. I go, "Hello, Jimmy." For some reason, his name was always Jimmy. So I drove up. First day, I go, "Hello, Jimmy." "What's your name?" "Oh, Bob Perlow." Should be on the list. Looking page after page. "Oh, yeah. Okay." I go, "Okay, gate." No. You're new. So what you do is you go down Melrose, take a left at Lucy's, and there's a restaurant. That's where you're right next to a dumpster. So that was my entree into show business. So much for Jimmy knowing who I was. Then I started writing on Laverne and Shirley. And then about 5 or 6 shows in, Gary Marshall, the great Gary Marshall, it was show night. And it was a big deal because it was the number one show. The lights would go down, there'd be a curtain. "Welcome." So he said, "Bob. And I have this on tape. He goes, "The audience," you know how he spoke, Gary? Oh, no.
Yeah, sure.
Had that cadence. "The audience, it's a little dead tonight. Go, talk to them. Be funny." No pressure. But for some reason, because of my improv, I go, "All right." Curtains parted. "Hey, how you doing?" And I didn't stop for the next 40 years. So after Laverne and Shirley, it was a show called Working Stiffs with Jim Belushi. John had died not that long before, so they had to talk him into doing it. And Michael Keaton played brothers.
Wow.
They were the Working Stiffs in a building in Chicago. And then I went to the producer of another show, and these shows nobody will even know. In the annals of TV, it was called Good Time Girls. Lorna Patterson, Adrian Zmed, no names. And I said, I know you got your own warm-up guy, because for Gary, goes here at the end of the week, $50 for doing warm-up. So I went, and that's what all shows were used to doing. They'd give one of their writers $50 to go out and talk to the audience. And I got good at it. So I went to Good Time Girls and I went to the producer. I go, look, I can make a difference in your show if you let me do the warm-up. No, we got a guy, one of our staff writers. I go, it'll make a difference. And they said, how much? So I said, free. I'll do it for free. If you think it makes a difference, then we'll talk. So I made sure it made a difference. I made sure the audience gave a standing ovation, and I made a big deal of the writers and the producers. I go, ladies and gentlemen, you see the show on TV every week, but unless you come to a taping like this, you don't get to see what I get to see, and that's the producers and the writers. So please, let's all stand up. Now that little thing,
Wow.
the person went, how much? I go, $300. You got it. Because they never got a standing ovation or any sort of acknowledgement as being producers. So it built from there, and I started getting other gigs, and the price kept rising up, and the rest is in my book.
So I want you to show your book, of course.
No, I can't even find them anymore.
Okay. So Bob, just for people, because not everybody's been to a sitcom shooting, taping, explain exactly what a guy like you did during the show.
The warm-up guy, and they called him the guy. We didn't have any names, whether it was a girl or a guy. Well, where's the warm-up guy? Not where's Bob. It's good. Yeah, I'm the warm-up guy. So the name of the book, I wish I had copies. Oh, here's one.
Hey.
So the warm-up guy. It was a, I can't find the right word. You couldn't overshadow the show. You couldn't be funnier than the show, but you had to be funny enough that they were excited to be there. And also they would have to see each scene 2, 3, 4 times. And the producers, if they didn't get the same laughs each time, they go, what's wrong? I go, it was probably a light that went out. But obviously, if someone tells you a joke 3 times in a row, you're going to say, it's not as funny. Nothing's as funny 3 times. So the job was to keep them involved in the shooting. So once they said cut, you're not going to talk about the show. You keep the balls in the air until they say, we're ready, Bob. Okay, remember what happened. Say it's who's the boss. Tony went into Angela's study, and he looked and he saw her diary, and that was a day ago. So they're going to come out in different clothes. So remember that. So when you're watching at home, it's not a 20-minute break. It happens simultaneously, right away, consecutively. And so it's the balls in the air, Bruce. You've been to the.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, I mean, people just wouldn't know that. What you just said, people wouldn't know that you were actually the puzzle piece that brought together the 2 other big pieces that hadn't been finished yet.
Yeah, when you're at home, you don't know there's a guy you hear at the beginning of the show on TV, filmed before a live studio audience, not knowing that it's a 3 to 6 hour ordeal, and nobody would sign up for that. They're not getting paid. They want to leave. They got dinner. Nobody has an idea of a 30-minute show takes that long to shoot, because they being the producers and the whole production company only have that one night. There's no redos. Once that show is over, by the time the audience is leaving, they're already taking down the set. So they can't say, oh, we made any mistakes. That's why they did each scene 2 or 3 times, sometimes more. We'll get into that, because they're ready for next week's show. So there's no going back.
And the people really couldn't leave. Not that they were completely held captive, but it was kind of your job to keep them there.
Yeah, well, they could leave. Or they could try to leave. No, know if you remember that. I came up with everything. Like I would be there. I'm the only one on the mic, so I'm the loudest. And I'm gonna reference Friends a lot because that took 8 hours. So hour 5, you see a couple in the rear going, and so it's 10 o'clock at night now. They've been there not since 5. They were in line at 3. They left their hotel at 1. So it's a good portion of their life. So my job, if the audience emptied out, I would get the brunt of the blame, and rightfully so. They're paying me to keep the audience there, not just keep them there, but involved and still laughing 5 hours later. So your question of they could just leave. So if I'm on the mic and I'm aware, I am hyper aware of what's going on, and I see 2 people going on, I go, so you, oh, hey, where you going? No, dinner. No, it's 10. It's dinner's over. You're not going to eat now. Seriously, you know how many people, and I'm looking at them now, you know how many people wanted those seats and you're going to leave them empty? It's not me that I'm worried about. It's Courtney Cox and Jennifer Aniston. You know how they would feel they come out here and you're gone? Please, would you like something to eat? And I would always have some food, whether it's not candy, because candy is a sugar high. And over the years, you get the, would you like a piece of brisket? I would have this on the side. I'd have one of the pages. What's your name? Now they're really on the spot, because now it's one-on-one rather than a group. Guess me. Morris Zuckerman. Morris. Penny, one of the pages. Can you bring Morris? And what's your lovely wife's name? June. Give them a piece of the brisket from that Jennifer Aniston had earlier. Okay. Anyway, folks, again, and there was a million tricks. And I have to say, I kind of invented giving stuff away. Whenever I would contract with a show to do the warm-up, I go, I need stuff. And I go, what kind of stuff? T-shirts, hats, whistles. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that it's free. And they would give me, I'd come out with a bag of stuff. I got to hold up a T-shirt. This could be yours. I put it away and very stingily give it out toward the end. Because if you give it out at the beginning, okay, we got our shirt, let's go. No, it's the carrot and the stick and the carrot.
And you'd have to know that sugar might work for 20 or 30 minutes, but then it's
That happened in 1978, where I gave out candy, because Gary Marshall used to do it, because there was the audience was secondary when I started. And then they realized that, no, it's important. If they don't get the laughs, they being the cast, their performance level goes down. And again, Gary used to give the bite-sized Snickers or little candy. And I saw that, oh, they were excited because they got that sugar rush. And then 20 minutes later, they're like trying to stay awake. So I said, instead of candy, let's give keychains, let's give hats. And shows then started making shirts. Laverne and Shirley,
oh, wow.
Friends, Who's the Boss? And I feel I had a lot to do with that, because that was part of my deal. I go, I'll take less money, but I need stuff to give away. Some people said, isn't that like a bribe? And I answer them the same way. I go, no, that's not like a bribe. It is a bribe. It's an outright bribe. Yeah, you stay. Yeah, stay. But you couldn't be mean about it. Like I said earlier, if you are negative and if they don't like you in the first half hour, they're not going to like you for the next 4 hours. So you couldn't have a negative thing going on. Otherwise, it would blow up and there would be a crowd that hates you. So it was a thin line you're walking to make sure that you're happy with the show, you're happy with me, we're in this together, it's an experience, this is fun. You're not going to do it again. Believe me, we don't have repeat customers. That's not to say it's bad. But it's long, but you're here. Again, Morris, you're not gonna eat now. Yeah, stay. Let me know if you want more. Anyway, though, you had to have that sort of a atmosphere going on for the whole show.
And most of the people that are in the audience were from Lansing, Michigan, and Tulsa, Oklahoma, out for a once in a lifetime trip out to LA. And going to see a show, their favorite show. Oh my God, it's a phenomenal thing. I'll tell you a story. And I know you know who David Auerbach is.
Oh yeah, mutual
And
friend.
did you work on Making a Living?
It's a living.
It's a Living.
Yes.
Okay, well, when I first went out to LA, I met David, knew David in Boston during the writer's strike of 80.
Yep. No.
81?
Late 70s. Have you watched the Showtime special, The Comedy Store?
No, I have to watch that.
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's When We Were There, Bruce. It's everything. Because when I was rooming with Jay, I would go with him to the Improv or the Comedy Store, and then the strike happened, and Jay wouldn't cross the line, Letterman wouldn't cross, and that caused a big brouhaha because he was also kind of seeing Mitzi, who was the owner of the Comedy Store. So it was the late 70s, and that's when
the writer's strike was 80, because I know, because in 81, after they'd come and visit, I went out there, I moved out there, so I'm pretty sure it was 80.
Okay. I would go with him before that strike, and then when
Yes.
the strike happened, go.
No,
wow.
the writer's strike, not the Comedy Store strike, the writer's strike.
Okay. Yeah, no, the Comedy Store strike was earlier. It was
79, 80. 70, yeah, because I just had David Wood on the show, and we talked about the strike. But the one thing I wanted to tell you is when I first came out to LA, after hanging out with David Auerbach, and he was doing the Love Boat. He had already done the Love Boat, and he was working on Making a Living. And it's a living, but they changed it though. They did change it. It was too tight.
Right. Good one.
Yeah. But the first few weeks I was out there, he said, "Hey, I got some tickets to this new sitcom. It's not even out yet. Do you want to go?" I said, "Sure." So it was August, right before the season. It was 110 degrees. We did wait online outside, and it was me and my sister. And after we went inside, the only thing I remember about this was that there was a bar, and all these people were running around the bar, not running, but walking. And there was always hysterical laughing. And it turned out to be Cheers. I was like,
and it's a living because that was also a revolving restaurant at the top of a
downtown LA restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah, a downtown LA building. So the other thing that David did for me, and I'll never forget him, is he always needed extras for the background. And that first year, I worked on every show. And I'll tell you, there's a reason why I'm saying this. On one show, they had baseball players. And so I looked like a baseball player. I was younger at the time, and I looked like a baseball player. So me and about 6 or 7 other guys, instead of being just an extra in the background, we became principal actors. And I bring this up because that day, because there were so many people involved, instead of shooting the show in 2 hours or 3, it went on for hours and hours and hours. I felt bad for the people in the audience.
Yeah. Did they have a warm-up guy?
I think it was you. That's why I'm wondering. Was it you?
I mean, Cheers.
Oh, Cheers, I don't remember. I mean, my God, it was Making a Living, It's a Living.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you if you were there, because I wouldn't have known you. But did you do Cheers in the beginning?
I did every show. When I mention it to people now, they don't, how quick it changes. I can't say I worked on Laverne and Shirley. They'll go, "What's that? Who's the boss?" Some people may know. Leno. I mean, that's how quick it changes. I mean, Fallon's been there for like almost 10 years. So it's a time period. Yeah, so I did It's a Living. Cheers, Taxi, Who's the Boss. I mean, I did every show in the 80s and 90s.
So I know you know Marty Nadler.
Yeah.
And Marty was my sleepaway camp counselor in Camp Winston, like at 1960. And I'm watching Laverne and Shirley, and I just happened to notice going by, written by Marty Nadler. I said, Marty Nadler?
Oh,
How
yeah.
many Marty Nadlers can there be? I wrote him a letter. And a couple of days later, I got a letter back saying, hey, next time you're out in LA, look me up. It was the nicest thing. It was such a beautiful experience. And I did go and went backstage and met everybody. He was a wonderful, wonderful guy. And I know that, being involved with the great producer of our comedy time, that they worked together very closely.
Marty was Gary's guy for the longest time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thrilled that I got to go out there. But I want to go back to I didn't realize that you knew Jay all the way from Boston. In speaking with Jay, he told me, or the audience at times, that he started his career working in the strip clubs in Boston.
That's part of his whole his life story. He was working all the way up on Route 3, little strip joints. But when we were in the improv group together in Boston, we played a place on Cape Cod, a biker bar. The last thing these bikers wanted to see was an improv group. So they kind of booed us off the stage. We left there. We were getting $50 a night that we had to split between 5 people and the lighting guy.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And so then when you went out to LA, you probably said, hey, Jay, can I room with you?
Well, no, he was actually, we both needed, I looked him up. He was living in a little room in his manager's house. And I was looking for a place. I go, let's find a place. So we found a little house up in the Hollywood Hills. And we bought a motorcycle together for $300 we saw on the side of the road. And like I said, every night he would go to the improv and I would just tag along. And I actually, even before that, I feel instrumental. Before the improv, we were living together and he went to pick up Bud Friedman, who was the owner of the improv in New York, because Jay worked the improv in New York. We picked him up at the airport. He was looking to open up an improv in LA. So Jay had the big Buick and we had Bud.
Wow.
And we were driving around and he goes, man, there's a good building. It was on Melrose Avenue. This is before Melrose became Melrose. And we were saying, it's a little sketchy. He goes, no, this is perfect. You've seen my place in New York. And he picked that and that became the improv.
Wow.
So we go back even to before the improv was in LA.
Oh, that was incredible. And then you had the competition between Mitzi and the improv, and that was really quite a story, like you started talking about.
More than even competition. I was at the Comedy Store one night. I was in a ad hoc improv group, and all of a sudden people going, oh, look. We went outside, and I don't know if whoever sees this will know, the Comedy Store is up on Sunset.
Yeah.
Down below is the improv on Melrose.
Right.
And saw flames. That was the night the improv burned.
Oh my God.
Wow, that looks like it could be Bud's place.
Oh.
And it was never solved.
Yeah, I was there when that happened.
Yeah, there were rumors that Mitzi arson.
Rumors, of course.
Yeah, and that was when the comics weren't getting paid, which leads, I know we're jumping all over the place, but the reason for the comics strike, because they weren't getting paid, Mitzi and Bud saw it as a training ground, and not just a training ground, but a launching pad for the Tonight Show. They would come. So look what we're giving you. We don't have to pay you, but the strike, and finally they settled for like, I think $25 a night, but it was something. Because a lot of them were living hand to mouth, the comics.
Oh, it was really rough.
Yeah.
And even when I heard they were getting $15, some of the guys, you
Yeah.
know, for doing a spot. And, you know, here you are living in LA and expenses are going up and up and up, and electricity is going up, and gasoline's going up, and they're paying, you know, $15. And I remember that they had to use the little side room to the left of the main entrance while they were repairing the fire. That's where
Yes,
that's where
yeah.
they worked out, in this little room.
They actually had the curtain up while they were doing construction. But the Improv was more of a hangout for comics than the Comedy Store. And that's when you see the special, you'll see, because they really get into that. Comics would go, like Pryor and Andy Kaufman, go to the Comedy Store to work out and then leave.
Right.
Where the Improv was more of a hangout because there was that restaurant as you walk in and the bar to the left.
And that's what made it so special for me, because just by being there and hanging around there and knowing not the local comics, because nobody in LA was a local comic really, I got to know and meet some of the most incredible comedy people in the world. We'd all be eating pizza and having a beer up at the tables,
Yep.
and sitting with other managers and producers. And I
Oh,
can't
it
even
was
tell
fun.
you the names of the stars that we sat with. Seinfeld was up there every night, and Paul Reiser was there. They were buddies coming out in New York the same time. And what a special experience that was for me.
It was a time that I don't know can ever be duplicated. I
No.
mean, the talent. I mean, from Robert Klein to Carlin. I mean, they all gravitated to these two clubs. Now there's what's the place on Sunset?
There's a bunch of other smaller places I hear now.
Laugh
We
Factory.
don't know.
Laugh Factory.
Oh, Laugh Factory, yes,
Yeah.
of course.
But other than that, I don't think there's that many places where they can be seen and have a career launched from just from their appearance. I mean, that's a days gone by.
Yeah, you know, when I went back to visit, I left in '86, and I probably went back, and 2 or 3 years later, and they'd had the riots, and they'd had fires and storms, and I went back to the Improv, and I was so excited because I was going to get a chance to go back there and see everybody. And when I went back, there was nobody there. The place was like it was still up, it was still going, but it was a shock to me because there was nobody there.
You can't go home again. No, we hit it in its sweet spot. No question about it. That was a time and a place that can never be duplicated. I mean, we were lucky.
Absolutely. And on so many of these shows you worked on, have you ever counted? I mean, I'm sure it's thousands of shows that you actually worked on.
Oh, thousands of shows, hundreds of different shows,
Right.
thousands of warm-ups.
Right.
Not thousands of shows.
Right.
I stopped counting. I mean, I would get calls. I would sit by the phone, go, "Hey, Bob, so and so would like to speak to you from Who's the Boss, from It's a Living, Taxi, Newhart, Cheers." And I would have a calendar in front of me. "Oh, can you do this for?" Yep. And I would book up at least 2 a week for years and years. And the price kept on going up. And I go, "Oh, this is good." It was good because I really liked it. If it had still been $50, I still would have done it. I wouldn't have been as happy, but I would have done it. I mean, I was so lucky. The old saying, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I felt that way. Fortunately, they felt it was worth something too. So, the money came along with it.
And for years, you did the Tonight Show. I mean, that's got to be in your field like the top gig. I mean, I went to see you. You put me up right in the front there, and that was I took my sister and my New York sister when we both visited. It was great. You were very, very kind and a good friend. And tell me a little bit about working. Wait, 2 things.
Yeah.
What was it like? Because people are going to want to know this. How long did you live with Jay? And tell us some of the stories about being Jay Leno's roommate because, for years, no one was any bigger than Jay.
No, and he's kept on. If you really think about it, he's 71 now, and that career is as long as, the Seinfeld, Jay, and very few others have maintained that height of popularity and relevance, really. We're working with Jay on the Tonight Show. Obviously, it's different. You don't want to impede on your friendship, so I kept it professional. He was, already been married 30 some odd years. At his wedding, there was only 6 of us. I mean, that's how far back unknown, completely unknown. But when you mention doing the warm up for it, that is the pinnacle of my profession. You get to warm up the #1 show. I started on the #1 show, Laverne and Shirley, and actually ended my career on the #1 late night show, which was Jay. That's when there was only 3. It was Letterman, Jay, Kimball toward the end, but for the most part, Johnny held the throne. Jay took over. It's an old story now, and he kept it at #1. Gave it to Conan, who lost the crown and became bitter about it. Again, this is a whole different story. I'm sure you know it. And still to this day remains a little bit bitter. And he's got no one to blame. He can't blame Jay for coming back. If he had retained the #1 ranking, there'd be no Jay coming back. But Conan feels, he couldn't walk away. He did walk away. He gave you the show. And then Fallon lost it again to Colbert. So Jay remains the guy who took over from Johnny and stayed #1. Living with him, he's a he's a man of very, very, cars and pizza, and always had a girlfriend. I was dating quite a bit, so I go, that's Jane Adele, or Jay. And then he married, and that was it. So he's in the 50 some odd years that I've known him. It's been a one-man woman. How do you say that? It meant one woman man. What is that?
One woman man. Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, for the whole time I've known. So he's never really fooled around and had his cars, and that's his MO since 1972.
When people say to me, how does somebody really make it in the business? Some people take shortcuts, and some of those shortcuts are what happens to them are sneaking out now. But Jay was one of the hardest workers in show business, and you said it before. He got on that motorcycle, and every night that he was not working out of town, he got on that motorcycle, went up to the Comedy Store, did a spot up there, drove that motorcycle down the hill to the Improv, did a spot there. He was one of the hardest working guys, and there's a reason why he made it.
And kept doing it even during the Tonight Show. You think he worked all day. He didn't just phone it in and come in at 5 and read the cue cards. He was involved in every aspect of the show, and we would finish taping at probably 6 o'clock at night. A couple of nights a week, he'd hop on a plane at 6:30 from Burbank Airport and either go to Vegas to do a show or Minneapolis to do a corporate gig. Yes, he got a fortune for doing it. But again, like myself, he loved just doing it. So he would have done it. Yeah, it was a private jet by this point and untold crazy money, but he loved doing it and worked at his craft. He's as relevant today as he was in the 70s.
And in some of those evenings when we were at the Improv, I found myself standing next to Jay, and we didn't really know each other. I doubt if he would say, "Oh, you look familiar." Maybe he'd say, "I look familiar."
Didn't like that. He actually brought that up once. He goes, "It's Bruce stood next to me. Could you know him? Could you tell him not to stand?" Go ahead. I'm sorry.
When people say to me, "Everybody, how is Jay really?" Unfortunately, they didn't say to me, how was Bob Perlow, really? You know, when nobody, how was Bob? But they did say to me every once in a while, how is Jay? And for him, I'd be able to say, a really sweet guy.
You know, it's funny you said, he's always had this great, even way before he got famous. He was a great, great comic, and still is. And his credo was, when people came up to him, it's so much easier to take a picture. There were no selfies then, so there was a third person with a camera, and to sign an autograph and engage them. That takes less time than blowing somebody off. And his motto was, that person is going to tell 100 people what a great guy Jay was. Where if you're a jerk to them, that person will tell 1,000 people what a jerk you were.
Forever.
Yeah. I mean, that lives in the ether for as long as you're relevant. So I always thought that was brilliant. You know, Sean Penn would take a punch at a guy. That takes longer than going thank you and sign an autograph. That takes less time, and you go away looking like a hero.
So, Bob, you put together a show which was absolutely spectacular. I tried to do my best to do whatever I could for it, but for one reason or another, it didn't work out. But you put together the best show. Tell us about it.
You know what? I was lucky in that from day one, I said, I want a record of this, not to show at any time. It was mid-70s, but I want pictures of me with everybody I work with or for. And it wasn't a selfie because there were no cell phone cameras. So not only did I have to ask them to have your picture, but I needed a third person to take the picture. So every picture, and I think I sent you some of them, I go, just so I have it. So my show is my career, what we're talking about now, and stories about each individual person. If I had a story, or if I didn't have a story, just my impression. A nice guy, not a nice guy. They were nice to people, they weren't so nice. I remember when there was a problem in the audience, whatever the show, the event was, that's part of the show. And it goes from Laverne and Shirley right through today. So luckily I have a record of it through photos. I'm so happy I had videos, and which came later with the VHS tapes. So yeah, my show is my history, which is a history of sitcoms from Laverne through Friends.
Wow. And so you've worked with countless, again, another thing that you can't count, countless number of actors, world famous actors, and not only the actors starring in the show, but all the guest stars that came on that show. And you've sent me dozens of pictures. I've seen dozens more pictures. Talk about some of the people that stand out for you that you were able to connect with, have stories about, because if anybody has those, you do.
One of my favorites, and this goes beyond the actual show. People go, oh, you've worked on 1 million sitcoms. What's your favorite? And a bunch come to mind, but one in particular, Newhart, the one with Larry, Daryl, and Daryl. So this is still early in my career, talking early 80s. And every Friday we'd tape. And again, my job, once the scene was over, cut, the actors would all go over their lines, change their clothes. It would be a 20-minute break. And every Friday I had a go-to bit that I did. I had a fedora and a raincoat and cue cards. And I had a sound guy that I go, get ready when I do this bit. But every bit I did was dependent upon sound. But this was New York, New York by Frank Sinatra. And I would pick a guy out of the audience. You're going to play Frank Sinatra, you're going to be great. And here's a trench coat, put it over your hood. Here's a fedora, Frank Sinatra, cue. Da, 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 and loud. And the audience would sing along, and the guy would be, start spreading the news, and he'd sing along. Bob Newhart would be in his this is like a year in, he'd be in his dressing room and he'd hear me singing with the guy. Not, I have a terrible voice, as you just heard, but he would assume that I, was okay and be singing along with Frank Sinatra, who was a friend of his. So that's every Friday. So around Christmas time in that first year, I get an invitation to a Christmas party. Now, every show that I worked on has a Christmas party where they have the cameramen, the grips, the guy who cooks the food. So I assumed, oh, this is good. I'm going to, a Christmas party for the cast and crew. And so I had a date and, the invitation, and we go, and I pull up, it's at his house. And it wasn't for the crew and cast. It was his private Christmas party. By private, I'm saying 100 people. And I'm looking, Don Rickles is there, and it was a sit-down dinner. I go, oh, this is so great. It was my first Hollywood party. So we finish eating, and I'm starstruck. I mean, later on, I grew to say just regular people, but this was like my first Hollywood party. So he goes, oh, okay, everybody, why don't you play something? Burt Bacharach gets up and starts playing the piano. Oh, good. Henry, why don't you help him? Henry Mancini. Oh, Don. And then people are getting up. And I'm just so excited. He goes, hey, Bob, yeah, why don't you do New York, New York? Not realizing that I didn't know how to sing. So Burt Bacharach's waiting for me to get up. So I get up. I start walking. Hey, why don't you help him to somebody else? So I look around, Frank Sinatra.
Oh!
Getting up to help me. So I said, I'm dead. I go, with, hey, whoa, Bob, I work alone. Huge laugh, and it got me off the hook. And Frank, I hummed along with him. But that was like a seminal point, not in my life, but in show business, for him to say, help him out. And just luckily, I came up with that line, I work alone.
He was a great talent. What was he to work with?
Bob?
Yeah, how was he to work with?
Unbelievable. The calmest professional guy, even keeled. My image of him now, and I worked on the show for 8 years with Mary Fran, who passed away, Larry, Darryl, and Darryl, Tom Poston. But my image of Bob is between this rehearsal, not show night, is him sitting in a director's chair with his glasses on doing a crossword puzzle. That's it. Okay, Bob, we're ready. And he would go. I got to write 3 episodes.
Wow.
I was in 2 episodes, and I did the warm-up. And to remind me to tell you the other one. The last night of taping, 8 years into the show, I get the script. I always get the script ahead of time. So I'm going through the script, and the last page is missing. I go, well, that's interesting. I call up, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of it when you're here. I show up that night, and we get the last scene, because I like to read it just to prep the audience, but there was no prep. We knew it was the last show. That wasn't a surprise. The surprise was, okay, everybody set up for the last scene. They roll what's called sliders in, where they cover the scene. And okay, we're ready, and action. Action was, the place went dark. And all of a sudden, yeah, Bob. The audience, I got chills. It was Suzanne Plachette. That was a surprise. For those who don't know, Bob Newhart's previous show was him as a psychiatrist, married to Suzanne Plachette. This is now 16 years later. They recognize the voice, Bob, and he turns on the light. They recreated the same bedroom with the same sheets. I remember the sheets. They were the tic-tac-toe pattern, black and white. And he gets up, he goes, Bob, what happened? Oh, I had a dream that I had a inn in Vermont. And that was the end of the show. the previous 8 years were a dream, and he was still Bob Hartley from the original show. It was like one of those moments you cherish. You go, wow, I was here. Same thing happened. Another moment, I worked on the Ellen DeGeneres sitcom. And again, people go, Ellen, she didn't have a sitcom. She did. I remember the night was, again, a moment. Yes, she's gay, as we all know now. And we being people in show business knew that forever. But America didn't know. In that sitcom, she was a single girl who dated until this one episode. They called it the puppy episode because they didn't want to give anything away. Her and Laura Dern were at an airport, and it was her coming out episode where she turns to her and she goes, I can't remember. And it was so old. They were at the gate where they have the microphone, which they don't have anymore, and you can't even go to the gate unless you're getting on a plane. And she turns to Laura Dern, she goes, because I'm gay. And she goes, what? And the microphone at the stand, because I'm gay. And it was supposed to be a laugh. The audience was, what? Gay? And that ruined her career until she got the Ellen show. But I remember the night, it was like, well, big deal. Yeah, we all know she's gay, but evidently America didn't know.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Oh,
One of the toughest things I would think about the business, you talk about shows for 8 years, 7 years, 6 years, 5 years. I always wonder, because I used to be a part a little bit of the Boy Meets World, and Mitchell Bank, who's is a great friend of mine,
yeah.
did your job there.
Yep.
And he used to invite us all the time. And we go, and as a matter of fact, I got my girlfriend, she became the massage therapist for Boy Meets World. It was phenomenal. And we talked yesterday about things that happened behind the scenes. And I'll just talk about this for a second. All the boys got together and practiced this Backstreet Boys dance song. And I don't know the name of the song, but it was one of the ones that created the biggest stir. And all the male actors on the Boy Meets World practiced this. And during one of the breaks, they came out and they reenacted a Backstreet Boys song. Well, it was deafening. The screaming and the yelling, it was almost like the old days with the Beatles. And, we talked, nobody had video back then, but that would be one of the great scenes that I remember backstage. What about for you? What went on sometimes backstage, that some of the connections that you really made and had, and also after that, so sad after 5, 6, 7, 8 years when it all comes to an end. What was that like for you?
It happened on a regular basis. Every show comes to an end. Every single show, every number one show at some point goes off the air, whether they're forced off or in the like Newhart, they go out gracefully. Usually they don't know because they leave in probably February and then get canceled. They don't get a chance to do a last show. Newhart got a chance, Mary Tyler Moore, where they all went out hugging.
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld, which was, to this day, people are unsatisfied with that ending, but nevertheless, now we know that's Larry David's MO. That's how he does it. Yeah, you don't like it? Screw you, So, yeah, it's bittersweet. How many shows get on? It's the lottery. You hit the lottery if you get a show on the air. The fact that you last more than one season, you hit a home run. But again, so much going through my mind. You go, don't buy the car yet, just because you got on a TV show. Don't buy that house. It may not last, and actually probably won't. Those that last, kiss the ground every day. And unless you have a piece of it, guess what? In 10 years, you're not going to be able to keep that house payment up, because very few. You know what I like to do? I like to look at the credits at the end of a show, and I look at I have every script. I have bins of scripts, and I
Wow.
look at the third lead down. I go, I don't think they ever worked again. They were a regular on a show that nobody saw, and yet that's the highlight of most of their lives. Actually, for most actors, getting on one episode, they talk about it I was on CSI. They were the corps, and they go, no, a lot of them. They go, wow, that was it. I was, again, my lucky stars. I had a really long career, and again went out on top in my estimation for a warm-up guy, not an actor. But see you later. I was lucky that I was able to do that.
But was it hard for you to say goodbye to everybody, knowing there was a good chance you might not see them again?
Oh, not just a good chance, most likely. I mean, it's like getting together, having a family, and then they all move down to their other families. There's not very many Ted Dansons that move from show to show, or Craig T. Nelson. Most of them, it's one and out. And knowing that early on in my career made it easier to say goodbye rather than it's the foxhole mentality. Don't get too friendly. The guy may be killed the next day. I hate to use that as an example, but it's so true. Let's cherish this moment. One of my favorite shows I worked on was terrible, but I have such great memories. She's the Sheriff. And I see from your look that you never heard of it. Nobody heard of it. It was Suzanne Summers.
I remember that.
You were in the business, but the general public, not only don't remember the big shows I worked on, Who's the Boss? I ask kids today, they never heard of Who's the Boss? Cheers, Taxi. She's the Sheriff is a blip. But boy, what a nice little family that was. We lasted one season, but nice. Suzanne Summers, as nice as anybody you'll ever meet. But again, going back to what you asked, is it hard? No, you cherish that family you had for however long it was. I did 1 million pilots. And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, for a show to get on the air, they have to make a pilot, which is a sample episode. And they make, at the time, hundreds of pilots. They chose a few, and then those get on and maybe go for a season if they're lucky. I got on the really good, successful ones. So I went 8 seasons, 5 on Cheers, 4 on Taxi. So I was lucky. But the lottery and the crapshoot, getting a show on the air is astronomical. I actually got one. And we didn't even get on the air, but I got to make my own pilot. So I got friendly with Jason Alexander because when he was on ER and I did the warm-up for it, we got close. Now here's where you question that. Go ahead.
Well, how do you get close to one guy and not to another? What happens? Because everybody knows it's like this, right? You're going this way and that way, this up ramp, that down ramp, high speed lane, getting off.
Let's go back to what I would ask. I was hoping you would say, wait a minute, you warmed up ER? That took place in the hospital. And wait a minute, Jason Alexander was not on ER. That's what I was going to say, so say that.
Jason Alexander wasn't on ER. What are you talking about?
There was a show in the 80s, a sitcom called ER. Elliot Gould was the head physician. It was an emergency room sitcom. Conchetta Farrell, who just passed away, she was the maid on 2.5 Men. Bruce Young, who was the transvestite hooker who came to the door with Tom Cruise on Risky Business, was the cop. Mary McDonnell was the co-star. She was the woman on Dances with Wolves, in the movie Dances with Wolves. Jason Alexander was the hospital administrator.
Oh my God.
Sitcom. That's how we got friendly. And we kept in touch over the years. I remember him, we went for dinner and he was with his wife and he was talking, because I don't know, I want to go back to New York. He was living in LA. I was just offered this sitcom, Seinfeld. I don't know. I go, it sounds good. And he took it and the rest is history. But he, after Seinfeld, said, are you, again, I'm jumping, because are you still doing Let Bob Do It? Now, Let Bob Do It was a small, uh, small unit of a show in New York that I got on called House Party. The host of House Party was Steve Doocy, who is now Trump's right-hand man on Fox. Fox and Friends is Steve Doocy. He was the host of House Party in New York City, and I had a segment on it called Let Bob Do It. People would write in and say, Dear Bob, I'm a housewife, it was in New York, in Queens, and I have a dog and 3 kids. I can't take it anymore. Let Bob do it. And I would go with the camera crew and I would take her place for a day. She let Bob do it.
Wow.
Every Friday, Steve Doocy would go, so we have Let Bob Do It. It was a segment. Bob, and I would come on stage, well, what happened today? Well, we got a letter from so-and-so, this was one that we did, who said, my daughter dared me to join the Polar Bear Club in Coney Island. I don't want to do it. I'm an old man. Let Bob do it. I went to Coney Island on New Year's Day in New York. It was ice, and we filmed Let Bob Do It. But again, that's all backstory. So Jason Alexander knew that I had this. He goes, do you have the rights to Let Bob Do It? I go, yeah. You want a partner? We can sell it. And we went all around with a reel that I put together of all the Let Bob Do It. And we went to Nickelodeon and we filmed a pilot, Let Bob Do It. A concept by Bob Perlow and Jason Alexander. But again, this is all because to say what a long shot. I had connections. I had Jason Alexander, and it took us a year to sell it. And we did the pilot. It was $1 million to do the pilot, and it never got on. So that's the long shot. Look at the pedigree. You'd think after Seinfeld, they would jump, because he was in it also. He did just, so it was me and Jason. I have that as a legacy. Let Bob do it.
Wow. I have a little bit of a Seinfeld story, but indirectly, Larry David, before he was on Seinfeld, and he really wasn't successful too much at all, really, very much behind the scenes, kind of a crazy, like, he comes off, but he did stand-up. He didn't like stand-up, and the audiences really didn't like him that much when he did a stand-up. And one night I happened to be making my way towards the main room at the Improv, and somebody with this big bushy hair comes storming out, pushes the door open, and there's a mirror right over here, and I'm standing right here, and Larry's standing right here, screaming into the mirror, God damn it, that audience, and he was cursing up a storm because he had done so poorly. And I said, who was that?
He's known for that he would go up, look around, and we all know what his face is now. Nope, put the mic down, and the fact that they let him get up after that is phenomenal. But they saw something. That curmudgeonly guy that curmudgeonly old guy now was a curmudgeonly young guy.
Yeah.
But the curmudgeon stood. Yeah.
And they made it work. So there were some benefits that you've told me about over the years to having your job, maybe entrance to certain restaurants or places or clubs or homes. And you told me about one in particular that you, very close to your heart, getting to the Playboy Club, Mitch.
Right now, it's considered almost a Me Too stigma to it. Like, but it was if you grew up in a certain time in America, Playboy was a progressive concept. I mean, women's lib, the pill. I mean, he wasn't not just a guy, oh, I want a woman, I want to get laid. No, he was a progressive, educated and forward-thinking guy. But I say that as a background, to get to the Playboy Mansion in LA was the holy grail for men of a certain age, mine, because that was like growing up. Oh, Playboy, look at oh, it was great.
I remember.
The mansion was known for its parties.
Tough business, and thank God you got to go out when you did the way you did. And I still think that show of yours has legs to it. And I think that if people found out that you could go to a playhouse, a theater, and bring all your pictures and your videos and talk all about show business, anybody listening to this show, you want to get in touch with Bob, you get in touch with me and we'll put you together. Like, great job, Bob. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. Invaluable to me, and people are going to learn so much about show business because of you tonight.
Thank you, Bruce. It's so nice to still be in touch with you and still friends. God bless you, man.
Bob Perlow.
Bob. It's Bob, right? That's your name? Yeah, I know you. You've been around a long time. Hey, Bob. The audience is a little dead tonight. Go out and talk to them. Go ahead. Wait. Be funny. Okay, that's a wrap.
Related events you can comment on from last night?
I don't know if Paul noticed this, but there was an imposter on the stage. Did you see that guy?
Yes,
I was the first to notice him.
A guy who had no business being there.
No business being anywhere. There were 1,000 rock stars on the stage, and this one guy who stood out because he looked more like kind of an aspiring accountant. He had a tambourine, and he was one of those people who was like shaking his tambourine in a very unseemly manner, pointing to other people, telling them what to do. And I kept saying, who's that guy? Get that guy off the stage. And he would slither over. First he was next to Boz Scaggs, then Diana Ross. Then he slithered over to next to Bruce Springsteen. That's where they nabbed him.
Oh, really? So this guy was just a crasher then, huh, Paul?
Just a crasher, yeah, with a tambourine.
Is that the first year this has happened?
First time I've ever noticed it, yeah.
Maybe one day he'll be inducted into the Hall of Fame. when they get down to the end of the list.